So I'm just at a student's house who has built a passive solar greenhouse, and we're going to give you a little tour inside. I really like this passive solar greenhouse. It's not too big, but it totally supplements their food for 3 seasons of the year. I'm pretty sure this greenhouse is capable of going to 4 seasons. In fact, I know it's capable of going to 4 seasons with a couple of small tweaks. And I think that what's really unique about this particular greenhouse is the foundation goes down 4 feet, so it's below the frost line. It has an additional layer of insulation, which is equivalent to about R9, and it keeps the ground from freezing all year round, which is really cool, and why I think this greenhouse could easily become a 4-season greenhouse. What was really unique about this particular structure is that you'll notice that it has a standard gable roof with a couple of modifications. And it's ostensibly just a shed package that they put glazing to on the south side and a roof on the north side. The greenhouse itself has 2 small raised beds inside and easily could have additional garden beds placed in there if they wanted to increase the productivity. It runs or is irrigated off of a small drip system. It harvests rainwater, which they then use inside of the actual greenhouse itself. And it has a small fan to help with ventilation. So let's go inside and take a look at the actual greenhouse and some of the components, and then we're going to hear from Tracy, who's going to give us a little bit of a tour and talk a little bit about how this greenhouse has made a big difference to her and her family with regards to their food production. So inside the greenhouse, we've got 2 small raised beds and a pathway down the middle. Tracy's using drip irrigation right here, which she's had an incredible amount of success with. And it's difficult to see, but the greenhouse itself is built on top of a cinder block foundation with an outside skirting of insulation and then a cedar shed on the upper part with polycarbonate glazing. And they chose a really high-end polycarbonate glazing, which has an R value of about 3. So this is really going to reduce the thermal losses throughout the winter, and just a great little space that will extend the growing season. It creates a place to hang out if you want a little bit of sunshine in the middle of winter, and it's a fairly cost-effective structure to build because it's ostensibly just a shed on top of a foundation that has a frost wall, essentially. Now, what's really cool about this greenhouse is that Tracy and her husband built it themselves, and I think that is an incredible testament to how these structures don't have to be complex. You can go out and DIY this. They are talented as far as building is concerned, but because of the fact they used a shed package on top of this foundation, I think that it's something that would be very approachable to folks. So the greenhouse has a vent up here, and this is one of those automatic vent systems. So when the cylinder on the vent gets warm, it's going to push the vent open, so it's automatic. It doesn't require any power. I've said this in previous videos. You always have to be careful that you oversize what you think you'll need, because these vents tend to be a little bit overzealous with regards to how much they think they can move. They're not quite as strong as people say they are. The other vent in the greenhouse is right here, and so this is where the low air is going to come from, and it's coming from the east, which is a great place for it to come from because generally speaking, when the greenhouse is getting too hot, the sun is already moving towards the western sky. And so this is a great placement of a vent. And you'll notice that there is power on the wall if they want to add any additional power. They've also got a little fan up here. One thing that you can do to improve productivity and reduce disease in your greenhouse is to blow a little bit of air around. And so that makes a really big difference. One of the most inspiring parts about this greenhouse is the cold frames on the front. And this is a really simple thing that you can add to the front of any greenhouse as long as it's not affecting the vent wall. And you know, we're middle November right now, and there are still incredible carrots coming out of this little cold frame right here. And you know, we talk a lot about food preservation, but one of the ways that you can preserve food is by just extending the season a little bit. And my gosh, I just took a bite out of this carrot and it is so sweet. One of the things that happens with carrots is when the cold starts to come, the sugar levels go up in order to try and protect it from freezing. And so these things just end up so sweet. So we should all have cold frames, and I think this is a great potential place to put a cold frame. And as Tracy's going to talk about a little bit later, this has helped to increase the R value of this south wall right here, increasing the thermal protection on that part of the actual greenhouse itself.
My name is Tracy Francis, and I live in southeast Calgary in Lake Chaparral. And I can say that what inspired me to do passive solar greenhouse is Rob Avis from Verge Permaculture. Really do not like living in Calgary where our summers are so short, and my husband and I thought, hey, we need to at least try this, give it a go. I like local food. The food that I'm buying in the stores is a little disconcerting to me at times, even when someone says that something is organic. What does that really mean? Right. So I much prefer to come into my own backyard and pick my carrots in November and pick my tomatoes in November. Can my apples and such. Yes, I do spend time in the greenhouse in the middle of the winter, and I cuddle up in the corner and I do my writing. It's a very inspiring place for me to come, and it's quite enjoyable, quite peaceful. It gets about warm enough for this window to open, the rooftop to open. This is in the middle of the winter. So what is it right now? It's probably about -7 right now. And so it's going to sit at about 10, 15 degrees. As it gets colder, of course, it doesn't stay quite as warm. But I then, of course, just plug in a heater, which down the road I would like to change. Grandkids love the greenhouse. They love picking things. They like the smells and the dirt. She loves putting her hands in the dirt. Well, over here I grow tomatoes. I grow tomatoes over on this side. And my husband's just installed some things here that seem to help them just grow up. Over on this side, I tried some zucchini this year. I did get a pretty good crop. Just thought it would be an interesting thing to try indoors to see if I could extend the season. That wasn't quite as successful, but what's so great about this is you can just keep trying and trying. In the past, I've done beans, and I find that the beans now, I have 3 generations of beans now. My husband introduced a drip irrigation system. Find that it gives me the support that I need with regards to watering. There's no need otherwise for me to water in here, and it is on a timer. If there's any other ideas that anyone else has, I welcome the expertise. However, for now, that's what we're using. I'll tell you, the plants respond very well to the drip irrigation system. Whoopsie. And they seem very happy. It gets humid in here, not too humid, but humid enough. I have a fan running when it's quite hot, and then of course I have the shade. I have the shade cloth up here for the warmer months. In the winter, I do bubble wrap through the entire area and on the door just to kind of help me out a bit. And then come March, early March, late February, I start bringing my seeds in here. You know what's wonderful about having a greenhouse is that when the hail comes, everything is safe. My husband keeps wanting to come up with an idea to protect everything else outside, like the apple trees. We lost so many apples this year. However, I didn't lose any tomatoes. No zucchinis. All the zucchinis were safe. So that certainly is a real benefit to the system. So the typical season in Calgary, I'm not from Calgary originally, but I would say when we first came here, I started planting after the May long weekend, which is so sad. and everything was done by early September.
Right.
Had to be out of the ground. Now I start late February, early March with my seeds, and the last thing that we pull usually is in November, which is our carrots outside here in the cold frame. My husband installed a cold frame up against the greenhouse, and we felt that that would help the knee wall just a little bit with regards to keeping things a little warmer inside here in the greenhouse. And it again helps me, just gives me a little bit more space to grow. And it's not quite as effective as in the greenhouse because the greenhouse does have 4 feet of cinder block down all the way around, and also has an R9 insulation. So that is very helpful for the soil, keeping the soil from freezing. But the cold frames help. The soil in the greenhouse does not freeze. It does get quite cold. So I haven't tried anything in the ground itself, November, December, January, February. However, it is quite a pleasant environment to come in the middle of the winter and be able to smell the soil. And but at this point I can't plant in the ground in the winter. So my husband built this greenhouse, and it's kind of a mixture of a system that was ordered and DIY. So what we did is we purchased just a basic system, and he put it all together. And then we replaced the north wall with chip rock installation and just a paint that would hold up to the water, kitchen and bath paint. We have our one vent here and our one vent up here that opens based on how much heat is in here. And also just I have some electricity in here to help me out with my fan, kind of circulate the air. The actual greenhouse sits on the cinder block, the 4 feet deep cinder block, and then the insulation sits on the inside of the wall. And just the door wall, we put the insulation on the outside, just because we thought we would try something different and see how each area would hold up. It's a greenhouse kit from a place in BC that we found, and it is made out of cedar. The glazing is a polycarbonate, probably an R3. So I think a passive solar greenhouse would be good for pretty much anyone. You don't have to have a lot of land. We're on in my opinion, a pretty small lot in the city, and works quite well. I think that anybody that's interested in extending the season or protecting their veggies, or just really like to have somewhere to be amongst something that's green and growing in March or November, passive solar greenhouse is definitely the way to go. Awesome. Just lifts your spirits, and it's wonderful. Take a course from Rob Avis because he's brilliant. And it's okay to make mistakes. Just keep on trying and enjoy it.
Overall, I have to say I'm really impressed with this little greenhouse. I think that I could easily see homes being built with structures of this size. I think that this would keep most families in greens at least 6 to 8 months of the year. With a couple of small retrofits, we could easily do microgreens in here through the winter time. And I bet you that the amount of heat that it would take to keep this thing just slightly above the 4 or 5 degrees Celsius that it probably remains at in the winter time, you could easily keep this thing at 20 degrees Celsius, and you could be able to grow figs or maybe some small citrus trees, All sorts of things will be possible, even in a small space just like this. We're always doing more case studies all the time. And if you have a passive solar greenhouse that you'd love to show to the world, get in touch with us and we'd love to come and profile your passive solar greenhouse. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you in the next video.